internet is breaking.
Democracy is hanging by a thread.
I'm Glennis Meagher.
And I'm Brian Derrick, and this is Vibes Only. And the vibes this week.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole... That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
And
it should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
We'll talk about Trump's unhinged rally, his former VP's unwillingness to endorse him later. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about the intersection of politics, the government, and the internet.
Picking up our conversation about TikTok and also discussing a case in front of the Supreme Court that has major implications on the government's role in combating misinformation on social media platforms.
We'll also check in on RFK Jr. and No Labels before playing It's Giving and pulling up our group chat. Let's check those vibes. Good day, sir. I'm going to just flag for the audience. You're a little under the weather. Poor thing. I'm sorry.
I'm a sick girly this week.
It's the allergies in New York. Once the things start
It's not. You and I have been on multiple calls this week, and you keep saying it's allergies.
I think it's the catalyst.
Ill. I'm like very ill.
No, for sure.
Like, it's allergies.
No, it's more than allergies. But I do think once those nostrils start opening, the viruses are incoming. Okay,
that is what they say.
Yeah, yeah. This is actually my segue here. Is that sounds like TikTok medicine. AKA totally made up. We're going to talk about TikTok again this week because it's pretty relevant and it's going to stay relevant for the next few weeks.
Yeah, we have to. It got spicy. So we chatted with Keith Edwards last week about the bill that passed the House of Representatives, which essentially says it gives TikTok a certain amount of time to divest from the parent company ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, or face a ban in the United States. And so my point of view last week was essentially like it is a forced sale, not a ban, that I don't think that TikTok will go away, actually. And that I think that with this much money on the table, that they will certainly find the right buyer at the right terms in any amount of time, like as required, to save billions of dollars and a very valuable market being the United States user base of TikTok. Yeah,
there's over 107 million TikTok users in the United States. So half of America.
I think it's 170.
Wow. I don't know. Change that 170.
I think it's 170.
Again, my TikTok math is failing me.
Which is pretty wild.
Huge numbers, which means we saw, the internet, your clip went live. A lot of people had the same POV you had. A lot of people did not have the same POV that you had. And the internet, especially people who are on TikTok, really went for the jugular of a lot of politicians who are on TikTok saying, pot kettle, you're using it to communicate to us, and now you're saying you want to ban it. Creators who have very large platforms who make a lot of money on TikTok. For those who don't know, TikTok has a very, I would say, fair but healthy compensation system for their creators. People are pissed, and I think that it's opened up this whole new dialogue about the internet and social media and how people use it and what the potential threats are.
Totally. So where things currently stand is that the bill is in the Senate, and we don't know what the likelihood of it passing there is. There's a group of senators that are pushing for movement on that piece of legislation, and there are other senators looking to do their own thing and to make it like a new bill that would also address the same thing, potentially with wider implications for other kinds of data privacy protections and those kinds of things. But I think that, to your point, let's stick with the internet's reaction, because the internet truly has been in uproar for the last week, even though we don't know whether or not the bill is going to pass.
One of the consistent things I'm seeing, which I noodle on, me, I'm a TikTok head. You see my TikTok dumps, but they're not, me proclaiming that I'm about to become a comrade in arms with my Chinese, viewers. It's dumb stuff. I'm posting like silly TikToks, like, America's Funniest Home Videos, but for the internet age. A lot of people on TikTok are saying you're proclaiming this massive national security threat. You're saying that we know things you don't know, et cetera, but there's no receipts. Senator Gillibrand said she's deeply concerned about what she's hearing in these closed door briefings. Jeff Jackson, who's made a huge following, I'm not quite sure how many million, but definitely over 1 million followers on TikTok. And I would say he changed the game on how one can communicate what's happening on Capitol Hill to the masses. also saying he's deeply concerned. But to me, it feels a little bit like a parent telling you can't stay up past 10 p.m. but won't tell you why. So the internet's pissed.
Yeah, I think that the main threads that I've seen are, we want to see the receipts, which we're hearing from people are coming via classified briefings.
And for those who don't know, a classified briefing means we can't hear it. You need a certain level of security clearance.
So there's that. The second thing I'm seeing is a lot of what about isms. What about Meta? What about the other data leaks? My data is everywhere. I'm in like class action lawsuits. We saw this from Pearlmania, which is who's a content creator. What about the rich guys who are going to end up buying it?
Totally.
What about like why? And so
or the Metas or the Googles that could buy it because they could presumably afford to buy it, and the government's already trying to regulate big tech. So make it make sense, Brian.
Well, I think that I'm happy to dismantle these arguments one by one if we want to go that route. But I think that where I would center it, or at least start the conversation, is there seems to be a disconnect in people fundamentally believing that China is like a potential bad actor in this scenario in a way that is distinct from Meta or from a random American billionaire or something like that. And that's what, if you look at the language coming from Congress and coming from people who are supportive of the bill, is very different than the language coming from people who are trying to support TikTok. Really? And it's this acknowledgement that China is a foreign adversary, and that for them to have this kind of influence over American politics, culture, technology, and data, like it's more than just it's more than just knowing whether you prefer Wendy's or McDonald's. Like that's not what we're worried about. That there are larger national security threats to a foreign adversary having that kind of sway and access to the United States.
Totally. I think that's like a bigger messaging problem that the powers that be need to get to those that are on TikTok. I also think I'm seeing a lot, and I would add another thread to that, of people rightly being frustrated with Congress not passing X, Y, and Z legislation, whether it be the border or raising the minimum wage, et cetera. But there is a very specific part of that argument they're leaving out, which is the Republican-controlled Congress is not passing X, Y, and Z. So I do find I'm seeing that argument on the internet a lot. I don't like it because it's just not true. Democrats have tried to pass many things that I consider to be objectively good for Americans. And I know it's an easier, face to camera video and you're going to get more engagement if you're like, Congress won't pass X, Y, and Z, but they want to ban TikTok in 4 days. But that's just not wholly accurate.
Yeah, that's a very silly argument to me. Sorry, people. But the idea that like we can't do this other thing that we want to do, so therefore we shouldn't do anything that we agree on. Like it just doesn't add up. I think that there's always been a really heavy bipartisan focus on national security, and that that is the lens through which we see this issue. And it's not surprising to me that there's so much wide agreement and such fast action being taken, even though this really has been kicked around for several years. It's not like they come up with it last week.
Trump wanted to.
Yeah, right. You're right. Trump, it was started in the Trump era.
Yes, this is a Donald Trump idea, although he's now flip-flopping because it's not in he wants to get some of that youth vote. But I will say, as someone...
And that donor money.
Money.
Jeffrey Yass, one of his biggest donors, is an investor in TikTok and stands to potentially lose money. Yeah.
Yes. Something, I am on TikTok for far too many hours in the day because it's part of my job. Okay. But if these committees want to give me the security clearance, I can present to them some evidence that it is in fact working and that people are in fact being radicalized towards communist ideologies. And I'll leave that there. So give me a call, Senator Warner. I'm here to help.
Yeah, I think that it's not going away. We're going to be talking about this for a while, and we need to hear from different voices than we're hearing from right now. I would love for us to continue this conversation in future episodes of the pod as this bill potentially moves through the Senate. I will say that I'm not hearing a lot of arguments against this legislation coming from people other than those who have like a career or financial connection
Which
to
makes sense.
TikTok.
By the way,
yeah.
No, totally. If I was a Chinese controlled technology application and I wanted to make sure that I had a mass messaging machine on the platform that I want to keep existing in the United States of America, I would pay those creators.
Right. Jeff Jackson has a huge following on TikTok. He put out a video first saying, "This is why I voted for the bill." And then people dragged him.
He got dragged. He fully got internet dragged, I think for the first time in his life. And he was like, oh shit.
Yeah, it was rocky for a while. And he then apologized, which I thought was unnecessary.
I apologize. I did not handle this situation well from top to bottom. And that is why I have been completely roasted on this app over the last 48 hours. And I get it. On the one hand, I have information about this app that isn't public. On the other, the language of the bill was going to upset millions of people. My thinking was I could reconcile those two things by just making a video that said, hey, here's the situation. And that was a total disaster.
I think that we have a similar perspective on the likelihood of the ban being quite low, on the threat to national security being real, and on the path forward being a forced sale. Like it just seems logical to me, even without the classified briefing. I know a lot of people don't trust members of Congress, and I've gotten a lot of that in my DMs over the past couple of weeks. I do have individual members of Congress that I trust very, very much. And to hear what they have said about this makes me concerned and like has pushed me toward support. And the last thing I'll say on it, I think it was somebody else, but somebody also made the point, if you are trying to prove that TikTok is not a national security threat, sending a push notification to hundreds of millions of people telling them to call their legislator and advocate for your financial and political interests when you are an entity that is at least partially owned by a foreign adversary is like not a good way to prove that you're not a national security threat. Like that's actually extremely alarming that they would have that kind of ability and use it to influence our political system. Imagine that happening 3 days before an election. Imagine them turning off access or in some way responding to the political situation in the United States in order to get their way on a specific policy. Like that's actually very concerning to me.
Totally. And something that this is going to be like two-pronged, which is the First Amendment of it all. Sometimes when I'm watching these TikTok clips on my For You page that are very, very aggressively commenting on the United States government or elected officials, etc., in my head, sometimes I think, say that again, but in Russia. Say that again, but in China. And I know that sounds like patronizing and whatever, but it's real. So the United States does have this really wonderful thing called the Constitution, and depending on who is reading it on the Supreme Court, it gets, it gets decided, or laws get decided, rulings get decided in certain ways. But there is a free speech argument that's at play here too, which kind of goes into our next story. And one last thing I want to comment on with the TikTok is that you do see that it is a great communication and organizing tool for marginalized communities and for people to organize and communicate. So people are, not everyone, but many people are digging into this First Amendment issue with closing out or banning TikTok. And we're actually seeing a lot of that on the Supreme Court in the next couple of weeks, with one oral argument being heard yesterday. Murthy versus Missouri.
Let's dive in.
Again, here we go. The Supreme Court. What are they doing today?
We warned you. We warned you we'd be talking SCOTUS a lot. So the case that they heard this week, it was oral arguments, meaning that we should hear a decision sometime in the next few months, is about the Biden administration's communications with social media platforms, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, about the information that they were taking down during the pandemic. So if we all think back to like peak COVID days when there was tons of misinformation and disinformation about what was happening, around what caused it, what potential treatments there were. And all
Bleach?
of the platforms bleach. We were using UV lights and bleach, according to our former president. And that was because a lot of that disinformation was getting removed by the platforms as like a part of their public health push to save as many lives as possible. Like that was the goal at the time. And I think that when you look at what has happened since, it's like a really valid concern. And the intent that this was coming from was like, how do we ensure in a very noisy and scary time that people get the best information about how to protect themselves and their families?
Mm-hmm.
And that can be done through public-private partnerships to get good information out there, like from the CDC and stuff. And so the administration had worked with these platforms to put it out there. And now Republicans are suing to try to get the Supreme Court to say that it's illegal for the government to work with platforms or like to coordinate with platforms in that way to remove disinformation.
That was a very good explanation. Thank you, Brian. Let's see how the justices are looking. You can kind of tell, you can get like a vibe check. That's what oral arguments are all about, like the vibe check, because you're like, how are they asking the questions? What are they really like prodding on? So many of the justices are aligned in that many appear skeptical in wanting, they want to be able to have or to give these companies and government agencies the ability to remove the information.
Right. And I think that there was a sort of inflection point in the arguments that I read that came from Ketanji Brown Jackson. KBJ asked the lawyers who are arguing on behalf of the Republicans in this scenario. And she says, let's say that there's this new viral trend where people are challenging teenagers to jump out of their windows and telling them that like they'll be fine, you should jump out of your window, whatever. And it's happening. And like teenagers are doing it. And there's this like epidemic of teenagers being injured or dying from jumping out of the window. Could the government ask these platforms to remove content encouraging teenagers to jump out of windows? And the lawyer said, no, the government cannot do that. And so naturally, the justices, including Chief Justice Roberts, were like, excuse me? Like, of course, the government should ask them to do that in that scenario. And so I think that like there are a million hypotheticals that we could go to.
This already happened. Do you remember the social media movement around eating Tide Pods?
Totally. Like, very that.
What? I actually am reading the notes now. Not only was Chief Justice Roberts like, he was like, we're going to ask that question one more time. We're going to give you another opportunity to answer that, which is like, ooh. Speaking of misinformation.
Oh my God, the king.
RFK Jr. Like, one, can we talk about how I honestly, being so empathetic, I actually felt slightly bad for him when I saw his entire family take a photo with President Biden on St. Patrick's Day and like at him basically and like troll him.
I did. I thought that shit was funny.
I was just that. Like, I don't know. So isolated. But
don't be a monster.
I know, don't be a monster. Just step aside. He is in the news because some of his like rumored VP picks are popping up, which we actually brought up last pod. Was you got the news alert while we were recording that Aaron Rodgers was in the running. I think he's out now.
I think we have our pick.
We do. It's Nicole Shanahan. Shanahan? Yep. How do you say it?
Shanahan.
Okay, I added an extra nanan. Okay, so let me tell you who she is.
Tell me.
Because there's some like hot goss, which I love. Okay, so need to know, she gave $4 million to the super PAC American Values in 2024. So this funded the $7 million 30-second Super Bowl ad with RFK, where the Kennedy family was like, do not use our name and likeness. We do not like you. Go away. Check. She was once married to Google co-founder Sergey Brin, which means that she's quite wealthy. And they officially divorced last summer. But she was reportedly, allegedly, romantically involved with Tesla CEO Elon Musk. And Musk and Sergey were longtime friends. Musk spent a lot of time at Sergey's house. This is from the Wall Street Journal. This is hard-hitting reporting. So anyway, something happened there. Something happened, and who knows what. So that's who she is. So she's in the running now to be...
All I heard was Sugar Mama.
LOL.
That is what I heard, because what you're telling me is that RFK Jr. just played Duck Duck Goose with like a who's who of weirdo independents, and then landed on one of his biggest donors, the person who gave him $4 million for his campaign.
Oof.
He's like, hey, do you want to be my vice president? I'll just sell you the seat.
That's so bad. I didn't obviously think of that because I was too immersed in the gossip. That's so like fundamentally bad for democracy.
Right. The idea that you would just like give your VP slot to the highest bidder, like, is what that feels like to me. Sketch.
So my next question for you, Brian, is like the no labels of it all. You've talked about no labels on this pod before. They're the third party. I don't even know what they are. They're a nonprofit that's like...
Oof, it's so sketchy. FEC, where are you?
Yeah, right? Like, should I file a report or something?
Been filed.
They've asked a bunch of people already who have said no. So Liz Cheney, Larry Hogan, Brian Kemp, Chris Christie, Mitch Daniels, Nikki Haley.
They're scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Too. Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema, independent. They tried to engage with, speaking of COVID, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, and then also non-politicians as well. Mark Cuban, who's actually just at the White House being like, I support Joe Biden. Retired Navy Admiral William McRaven. Like, what? So what's the labels up to?
When you are going after former lieutenant governors, you need to have a come to Jesus moment, because lieutenant governors are, I'm sorry, Antonio Delgado, but like the most useless office in the country. Like, they do nothing.
What if something happens to the governor?
They do nothing. And if you're going after someone who once served as a lieutenant governor, like, you're lost. You've lost your way. A lot has happened.
Wait, I missed one really important one. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
They wish. They can't afford him, baby.
They wish.
No way. No Labels has been up to a bunch of mischief. And they had their little convention online. Basically, they make plans and then to do this like very public and open process. And then every time at the very last minute, they change it and make it more secretive. And so they had this private 800-person virtual summit convention, and they voted to move forward with their selection process, even though they didn't have like any quality candidates. And so now they're moving forward with still a relatively secretive process, even though we do keep hearing, oh, they asked me. And they're trying to find someone. They have like some parameters around who would be a good fit, but it doesn't seem like anyone who might fit the bill is actually interested. And so we should know, hopefully by the end of this month or early next, they will actually have to come to the realization that they're not going to be able to put forth a candidate, and they will officially say that they're not going to nominate someone. That would be the dream scenario, is that happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll watch that space and see what was going on there. Someone that I am surprised they haven't approached, or have they approached, but who I'm going to talk about right now because of a pretty big announcement he made that no one seems to care about, is Mike Pence. Have they approached Mike Pence?
No way.
Why? Is he too Republican?
He's too Republican.
Okay,
he was the vice president 3 years ago.
But okay, here's my rationale, because in case you missed it, he went on Fox News over the weekend and he told Martha McCallum that he will not be endorsing Trump in this election. That's hello, people. His vice president is
tectonic.
Like, no.
Guys, that's a really big... We should have opened with this, honestly.
I know.
That's a really big deal.
It's a huge deal. And it's not just Pence, by the way, who does not support Trump's candidacy for a second term. It's Trump's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He called him a wannabe dictator. Trump's Secretary of Defense called him a threat to democracy. Trump's National Security Advisor called him a danger to the United States. Trump's Chief of Staff observed that he is a person who admires autocrats and murderous dictators, a person that has nothing but contempt for our democratic institutions, our Constitution, and the rule of law. These are not like
that was his chief of staff.
Literally, that sounded like me like ranting at midnight, into my phone, being like, we can't have a second term of Trump. These are people who served in the closest offices, who oversee some of like the biggest departments of our government, saying he's not the guy. And not only that, he is a massive threat to this country.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty earth-shattering, to be honest. And I think that between that and like Dick Cheney has kind of been going scorched earth against Trump, it just seems like we could run commercials with just Republicans. Like we don't even need to put any Democrats in any commercials. Just run commercials with Republicans all year saying that Trump will absolutely destroy the country if we let him anywhere near the Oval Office again.
Like, could you imagine if like Al Gore was saying that about Bill Clinton?
No.
The answer is no.
Yeah. Can you, I mean, modern times, can you imagine Kamala Harris coming out and being like, nope, Biden can't do it. No way. Like
Totally.
I worked with him for 4 years and he's going to be a disaster. Like that would be traumatizing. Like it would be so bad. And that's what's happening. That's literally
what's happening. And again, it's not just one person. Like Pence is not an outlier here. It is.
Although he does have extra incentive after we all watched him almost get murdered on closed circuit TV in the Capitol. Like
Trump was like fed him to the dogs.
Literally. But like literally, he was
for
like
not certifying the election.
When he basically tweeted on January 6th, Mike Pence, where you at?
Literally. He's like, I can't find you on Find My Friends. Can you please like let me know where you are?
And Pence made no mention of that in his non-endorsement.
I would be leaving with that.
Exactly. I would be like, well, the guy did.
Me.
There were people chanting outside that they were going to hang me and they had gallows set up outside. And he kind of took their side and still calls them hostages. So no, I'm not going to be endorsing him for president, bro.
And one quick note on political violence here is that Trump had a rally in Ohio this past weekend, again calling the January 6th prisoners hostages. And what he said that was truly frightening was he said there would be a bloodbath for the auto industry if he loses the election. Huh?
So he was talking about, okay, I did go back and I watched more of this video to get the context because there was a clip that said, if I lose the election, it's going to be a bloodbath. And it went viral immediately. And a lot of people were freaking out. And then,
but just for auto workers.
And then Trump came out and was like, no, I wasn't talking about like whatever. I was only talking about the auto industry and the media is fake and against me. And so I went back and watched it. And like, yes, he's talking about the auto industry at the time. And he's talking about putting a 100% tariff on cars that are made in Mexico or something. Okay. And he's like, yeah, it's going to be a bloodbath if I don't win. Okay. But that'll just be the start of it.
We're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line. And you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole. That's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it.
And so it's like, okay, yes. And then also you kind of put the ellipse on it, ... to what else are you referring to?
Right. It's giving stand back and stand by or whatever.
Totally.
Yeah.
And 100%. And for me, it's like, I use that kind of language. I'm not someone who's like easily triggered by like violent language out of context. I might say that it's going to be a bloodbath if I have more than 3 Negronis. You know what I mean? Like, which is true. But, but it's that combined with his refusal to condemn political violence ever that makes it so problematic. If he were to come out and say, I am against all political violence, it has no place in this country, and I support like democracy and free and fair elections, then people probably wouldn't make such a big deal out of him being like bloodbath, slaughter. But like when you use the violent rhetoric and you support the violent actions, that is what is such cause for concern, is that you don't get to say bloodbath out of context and have it go over smoothly because you support literal political violence and insurrectionists trying to overthrow the government.
Totally. And he also continued to use dehumanizing language against people. He called migrants, what he said was, they are not even people.
I don't know if you call them people. In some cases, they're not people, in my opinion, but I'm not allowed to say that because the radical left says it's a terrible thing to say. These are bad. These are animals.
So horrifying.
so horrifying. And, he's in the same rally that he was just like, he just kept going and going in this rally. He's using this like flip the script strategy, saying that Joe Biden is actually the threat to democracy. He said, if this election isn't won.
If this election isn't won, I'm not sure that you'll ever have another election in this country. Does that make sense? I don't think you're going to have another election in this country. If we don't win this election, I don't think you're going to have another election, or certainly not an election that's meaningful.
No, that's you. That's you in Project 2025 and your 400 pages from the Heritage Foundation about how you're going to consolidate power into the executive office.
We say it a lot, but Trump has really had an unhinged week. In just the last 72 hours, he made this comment about a bloodbath in Ohio. He said that any Jew who supports Democrats hates their religion and hates Israel.
The Democrat Party hates Israel. Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion. They hate everything about Israel, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
And then he also today made news saying that he would deport Prince Harry.
Oh, I saw that right before we got on.
Use. And I just want to welcome people back into what it's like to have Trump in the mainstream. He really hasn't been for the last 3 years. We're referring to this as Trump amnesia that people have forgotten. This is what it's going to be like for the next 8 months. Yeah. Because this is what it's like when we're actually focused on Trump and not deluding ourselves around Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy and this thing that was never going to happen.
Right.
Now that he's front and center, he's going to be making the news all the time. And this is the kind of news that he makes. It's bigoted, gross, outlandish, and anti-democratic headlines all the time.
Yeah. And we can't have the amnesia and we can't get used to it. He means what he says, even if he is using at times hyperbolic language. To your point, it's not necessarily hyperbolic if he's proven that he actually will action the words.
Hundo.
It's
giving.
Okay, so we're gonna do something I haven't seen yet, but apparently Fox and Friends took a little break to pray on air.
This is a transition for transitions if you've ever had one.
So Fox and Friends.
This is very Fox and Friends. So ready your heart. It's the 5th Sunday of Lent, and our prayer series continues with a reading of prayer from the Hallow app. We all need it. Let's do it this morning. Close your eyes, if you would. Bow your head. Jesus, today we begin the holy period of Passiontide.
Fox and Friends Sunday Prayer Series is brought to you by Hallow, the #1 prayer app in the world.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that Mark Wahlberg's prayer app?
Wait, it's giving SpawnCon.
It's giving capitalism.
It is. It's kind of giving Parks and Rec. That very much feels like something that would happen in an episode of Parks and Rec as a gag.
It's giving Mark Wahlberg's pockets are getting much larger with cash because people are downloading his app.
Pass the bowl. How much did you get paid to help people pray today? That's
I
really
wonder
wild.
who was in their kitchen being like, okay, I guess I'll pray now.
It's giving ad placement everywhere.
Everywhere.
Even your prayers are now subject to ad placement. Yeah. We have to pause your prayer.
I wonder if this is what Jesus wanted when he resurrected. He thought, I can't wait to be, prayer apping through Fox and Friends.
And for just $4.99 extra per
literally
month, you can get the express pass so that you head into heaven straight away.
That's called confirmation. Yeah. That's called getting confirmed. Yikes. Well, Christian nationalism is here.
Not if I have anything to do with that.
Yeah, same.
Glennis, what has been blowing up your group chat this week? Because for me, all I can really say is that there's a woman in South Florida who's selling hurricane shots to college-age boys for $30, where she gives them a shot and then slaps them in the face.
Good for
and
her
there's
for
a line,
them.
and there's a line around the block, and that's what my friend sent me in the group chat this week.
Honestly, kind of what's wrong or right with America. I can't. A jury's still out in my head on that. Let me see. What is
late stage capitalism, baby?
Yeah, $30 for a slap. All right. I don't want to really talk about it that much because I'm over it. But the PR crisis happening in the United Kingdom, that is my group chat is getting down to the bottom of that. My thing, only time will tell. And, what drama to say I'm not coming back until Easter. and she resurrects like Jesus Christ on Easter Day and appears.
The other commonality in our group chats that we haven't discussed nearly enough is Survivor. Not political, but it should be part of Congress.
If I could have one job, if I didn't do what I did, my job would be field producer on Survivor franchise.
That's a good one. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I would go back to school just for that.
You don't have to go to school for that. I basically did that at WeWork. Like, we love Survivor, you and I. Maybe actually we should add a Survivor.
Yeah, we need a Survivor segment here.
Email us if you're also in the Survivor Hive.
Yeah, I actually want your hot takes on the season. So please DM, email at me.
Yeah. Brian, we have to talk offline because I don't want to do any spoilers, but I'm shocked by some things that have happened this season. Shocked. Are you shocked? Brian, I'm going to set us off with a good vibe goodbye today. I don't know if you've caught the news this week, but the White House has called on Congress to pass a plan to invest $12 billion to create a new fund for women's health research at the NIH. And in the meantime, because it has to get approved and passed in Congress, he signed an executive order directing the NIH to spend $200 million on women's health research, which is huge. The Alzheimer's diagnoses are 2/3 women, 80% of all autoimmune diseases, women, and we don't know why. This is really a big deal. It's like the first time a president has said like menopause at the executive desk and like signed something towards it. A couple other things. It's just going to, across the board, expand the federal government's funding and research into women's health, including midlife conditions like menopause, arthritis, heart disease, and especially health issues affecting women in the military. So this is objectively a very good thing.
Period.
I'm stoked. I have a lot of friends who have autoimmune disease where doctors are just like, I don't know, good luck. And we don't know without research. So the administration is funding said research. So let's figure it out.
Who run the world? Girls.
Girls.
As I've always said, who run the world? Girls. That's it for today's show. We covered a lot of ground today, and you may or may not have agreed with everything we said, particularly on TikTok. Or you might have things that you'd like to add to our discussions next week. In either case, we want to hear from you. Send us a note, or better yet, send us a voice memo at vibes@couriernewsroom.com. And another request, if you don't already follow or subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods, please do. And tell someone else that would love our show to check us out. We, of course, want to bring more folks in and spread the vibes. We'll be back again next week to check them. See you then.
Vibes Only is a production of Courier, a civic media company that protects and strengthens our democracy through credible, fact-based journalism and seeks to create a more informed, engaged, and representative America. Vibes Only is produced by Devin Maroney with support from Courier's Kyle Tharp, R.C. DeMezzo, and Daniel Strasburger. Tara McGowan is founder and publisher of Courier.